Hi, and welcome to this video where we will be talking about voices in the head. Now, I have been working my way uh, through my schizophrenic mind for more than 6 years now. Every day, every day, working my way another step further through my mind, another breaking point, another step, another breath, another writing, another self-forgiveness, another supportive step in support of myself, in support of life, through my schizophrenia. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, I'm an ordinary guy working my way through my schizophrenic mind. As you might know, voice in the head is very common with schizophrenia, and uh, even so, I think that most all people experience in their adult life some kind of voice in the head. We all do to some extent, schizophrenic or not. So, voice in the head are like thoughts that have been polarized and sharpened, you could say. They are like thoughts that have been made more extreme, more violent, perhaps more abusive as what they are saying, and in the volume of what they're saying it. It's very loud, it's very dramatic, it's very demanding. It is very inferiorizing to one's mind. When one experiences voices in the head, voices in the mind, one very often becomes very inferior to one's own mind. So, for me to discover that voices within me came from personalities within me that had their programming of specifics, specific data, programming, behaviorist, psychology, programming of each and every single one personality within me, which were dozens of personalities, which we all obviously carry in this matrix world. So, if we are to look at what is a voice in the head, we must also understand what is a thought. How is a thought created? And we go through our lives and hardly any of us are ever taught what is a thought. How does a thought act inside us? How is a thought yet created? How is a thought as we know it created within the physical? How is that possible? So, in very brief terms, I will say that a thought is a tiny, 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 tiny destruction of one's muscle tissue, of the personal body. A thought, as it is a tiny, 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 tiny separation of self as the muscle tissue of self. That is why we see so many people thinking like, oh, it's so draining to have all these thoughts, oh my god, it's so draining for me, I feel exhausted from thinking, excessive thinking, I'm losing my mind, I need hashish, I need heroin, I need alcohol, I need shopping, I need porno, I need Facebook to soothe my mind, to lessening my thinking, to calm down. I mean, thinking in itself, in the very, very creation of a thought, is a sabotage against one's own physical. I'll say this one more time to make it crystal clear. Thinking as it is in itself is a tiny, tiny, tiny sabotage, destruction of one's own physical. So when we have voice in the head, you could say this process of a thought is then made into an extreme polarity, an extreme happening, event, phenomena in one's mind, in one's head. And if you're, in addition to that, is schizophrenic, you have lots of extreme polarities of emotions and feelings within you that are making this voice in the head perhaps scream very nasty things at you, very disturbing and we might say abusive things, voices that goes on in one's head. So they're not some guy from Alaska or Sibir or Amazonas or Africa creating these voices in one's head. They come from the self. So, and underlining all of this, and many, what shall I say, great importance, is for everybody to be aware how I have managed to work my way through layers and layers and layers and layers and layers and layers of voice in the head, of disturbing personalities, of such a thing in my mind. I have used the tool of self-forgiveness. I have been speaking to myself self-forgiveness. I have been writing to myself self-forgiveness. I've been writing to you self-forgiveness. I have written and spoken and sounded self-forgiveness to make it more efficient, to heal myself, to become standing, sanity, grounded as myself, with using self-forgiveness as a tool in my unique healing recovery from schizophrenia, from voice in the head. So if you would like to learn to work with self-forgiveness, I welcome thee. And if you're schizophrenic or if you have mental illness and you're going through struggles and life is tough and you're not feeling like you're getting nowhere, if you want to contact me, please do so. I can hook you up with a chat that I have about working on mental illness. We have several people all over the world working to stabilize, to become more sane, to help each other, to assist and support one another. So yeah, to heal the voice in the head, to heal one's polarized personality units and data and entities and demons in one's head and whatnot, to be able to work through that, the best tool we have today of self-healing therapy is to work with forgiving the self, with sounding, writing, speaking self-forgiveness. And it takes time. But once you start to voice yourself to yourself, once you start to voice yourself to yourself with self-forgiveness, you will guaranteed notice a difference. That is guaranteed. So if you start to voice and write and work with forgiving self, that is a great discovery of the heaven within, the self within, of the physical, of the who we are as origin, as humanity, as oneness and equality, and what is best for all. So check out the links. If you're going through life with much voices and shadows and pictures and hallucinations, check out the links. Let's learn to work with self, to embrace self, to forgive self, to be one's own best friend, to learn to know self. Thank you.